So I think a couple points here is just like any standard, we're kind of needing to approach more of a critical mass perspective for adoption. So I think current challenges in the area as with respect to FHIR is just in some cases broad scale EHR support. Like there is what's mandated through the Cures Act. There's certain gates and timelines by which those mandates need to be in place. And so you'll see innovators like the Epics of the world, the Cerners of the world, the Allscripts building an API arsenal and making them publicly available for their own partnership purposes, but for their own customers and clients and healthcare entities. And so I think you're going to see, just like in most markets, you're going to see leaders push the standard and be available, and they're going to do that in a way that A, makes them compliant with the industry regulations, but B, supports what business objectives they're trying to accomplish. So I think wide scale challenges right now is you might not see in the, I'll call it the long tail of the EHR market, just heavy FHIR availability beyond just your basic reads. And that might make interesting things challenging. Depending on what your workflow interactions and use cases are, that might be a scenario for someone like a Redox to step in and say like, hey, we have a ubiquitous platform. We have a data persistence layer. Like it doesn't really matter that the other side doesn't have FHIR. You can have a FHIR unique and repeatable interaction if you're integrating with our platform. So I think challenges on just broad EHR support that I expect to ramp up as some of the timeline, the legislation timeline milestones get hit. And then I think there's another element to, I mentioned it a little earlier, we're on the 4th iteration of FHIR. And some people that are probably new to the standard go, should I start on 2? Should I start on 3? Like, what's the difference between 2 and 3? Should I just go with 4? How often is there going to be a new one? And so there's just like, how do I understand the nuances of how resources might change in the FHIR standard from version to version to version? That I think might be some challenging to some folks that are fairly new. I would say the traditional cycle of like, the V2 landscape, the pattern of upgrading the spec was on a little longer time horizon. And in this RESTful API model, you're going to see like a more dizzying pace on that. So I think there's probably some challenges for folks to kind of decide how and where do I start, and then how and where do I settle, and on what time horizon do I look to move, just in terms of challenges.
Makes sense.